Hey, everybody, welcome to the Aligned Love Podcast. This is the place where I am going to help you find the one thing that you feel is missing: healthy love. I am your host, Lauren Zoller, and in this podcast, I will share with you how to attract love, live in alignment, and elevate your deepest relationships. So buckle up, get present, tune into your body, and open up to the possibility that you truly do get to have it all. Let's dive in. Rachel, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, so excited. I know that we were playing a podcast tag for a little while,
Yes.
so it's going to be really fun to finally dive in and chat. I've been wanting to talk to you for a while now. So I would love to know if you would like to set an intention for everyone that's listening today. I want you to go ahead and just set that for everyone that's listening and what you want everyone to get out of our talk together today.
Oh, I love that so much. And I would love to set the intention for everyone listening that they get really curious about all the things that we're talking about, and not just listening from a place of like, oh, good for you. You were able to do these things, more so from representation of what's possible and the deep awareness that we are the creators of our life experience and we can literally create whatever we want to. It really all comes down to if we believe that we're worthy of it, and if we decide who we are, what we're capable of, and what we believe that we deserve, because whatever you choose to believe becomes real for you.
So true. So true. And I know that ties in a lot to your story and how you really preach. I know that you talk about anyone can be the hero of their own story. Mm-hmm. They just need to embrace it and they need to really own it. So tell us a little bit about how that came to be in your life. How did you become the hero of your own story? And how did this become one of your mantras that you live life by?
Oh, such a great question. First off, I think it's choosing daily, and especially in every new chapter of life, because every new chapter of life throws you curveballs. And I think oftentimes we end up getting stuck in old identities or trapped in these prisons that we create for ourselves because we're so used to doing the same things all the time. And we start to believe that we're just that person. And so I'm really passionate about helping empower people to question everything, like daily. Like, is this who I really am? Is this who I really want to be? And what character am I playing in my life's movie? Because we are the actor, the writer, the director, the producer of our own life's movie. And oftentimes we end up playing the supporting character or even the villain, or oftentimes it can get really challenging to be the hero of our own story. It's scary. It's hard. Oftentimes I think in hero stories, when we look at heroes, represented in films or anything like that. I mean, I'm an actress and a filmmaker, so films have changed my life ever since I was a little girl. And I love looking at these kind of hero stories and realizing that oftentimes we put these heroes up on a pedestal, like they have it all together and they figured it out and they have all these superpowers or whatnot. But oftentimes, most all the time, every hero story has they don't want to be the hero. They are like, I can't do it. I'm not good enough. I don't have, I don't want to, I don't want this responsibility. I don't want to have to take this on. They always have to they always have some sort of help and support from community, friends, a sidekick. They're not doing it alone. And so there's just so many things we can learn from the hero's journey, the hero story. And in my life, I grew up a really scared, insecure, anxious little girl who I was a very competitive gymnast growing up. And I got trapped in this identity of, I thought that's who I was, all I was. And I thought I had to go to the Olympics or I was like a failure. And it got to the point where I was so unhealthy and unhappy. I was throwing up every Tuesday before practice because I was so terrified of getting hurt, getting yelled at, not being the best, not being good enough. And I really didn't realize, like, I was very young, but I didn't realize the power of my mind. I didn't realize that a lot of the fear, the stress, the anxiety, I was consciously or subconsciously creating a lot of those experiences, even to the point where I shattered my hand. And I remember being relieved when that happened. And I realizing of like, oh, I on some level wanted this because I wanted a way out, and I was too scared to just say it. I was too scared to just stand up for myself. I was playing the supporting character, like not
Yeah.
choosing my own life and letting other people dictate my decisions and where I went and what happened to me. And anyways, it's a really long story that I talk about uh, a lot, all the ins and outs and twists and turns. But I went from that little girl to then seeing this movie that changed my life. And it was the first movie that just like woke me up. And I was like, I was the first dance film I had ever seen. And I was like, I want to do that. I was so inspired by this movie. I sat in the theater and I went from feeling depressed and confused and afraid, and all those really hard emotions, to feeling so lit up of like, I want that. I felt so changed in that movie theater. And I just sat there and I started practicing. I visualized it because I learned visualization as a gymnast. And so I started visualizing myself doing that. And I was 14 at the time. And I never in a million years thought that I could ever actually play the lead role in the sequel to that film. But about 6 years later, and my hero's journey of all the twists and turns and ups and downs, and some of the things that I thought were the hardest, worst things that ever happened to me, that ended up being the best things that ever happened to me, that put me at the right place at the right time to actually land the lead role in the sequel to that film about 6 years later. And that was my first film ever. And that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Usually, you have to play a lot of background characters, a lot of different, but I did very specific things along my journey, because I also got really into personal development and psychology when I was a teenager, and I started putting all things to practice. And I made vision boards, and every day I wrote down like, I'm going to be in a movie like Center Stage one day, and I would watch it all the time. When I moved to LA when I was 18, I didn't know anybody, and I was terrified, and I was homesick, and I was just crying myself to sleep most every night. But I would watch that movie, and it would remind me of why I was doing what I was doing. It reminded me of that dream and that possibility, and all the books I was reading, continuing to feed my mind with, it is possible. If they can do it, you can do it. If not, if just believing in hope and possibility, and just continuing on in the journey. So I just think we're way more powerful than we know, and it really depends what we're continuously feeding our mind with, that allows us to change our thoughts and our beliefs about what is possible for us.
Yeah, I think that that's so beautiful. And I preach that all the time. First off, I just want to say full circle moment, because I was a dancer growing up, and Center Stage was I watched it on repeat.
Me too.
I never stopped. I never stopped watching it. It was the one thing. And I always my dream was to dance for Janet Jackson. I still think, there's still time. She's still around.
Yes.
But such a full circle moment to talk about that. But I think it's what you're talking about is so amazing and so beautiful, because we talk about often your reality is a reflection of your most predominant frequency. I say this all the time. Your frequency is combined of your thoughts, your feelings, your actions, your beliefs,
Yes.
which are all underneath an identity of who someone is. And so I always I tell my clients this all the time. If you want to shift your reality, you've got to figure out who is the identity of the woman that you really want to step into. And you have to start embodying that before it's even in your reality. And I think the story that you just gave was so beautiful, because what you did is you did that. You figured out, okay, wait, I want this new identity.
Yes.
You were inspired, you saw it. And then you actively said, okay, I've got to change my thoughts, my beliefs, my actions, the way that I am going to show up in the world. And then boom, the reality landed in your lap. So what happened next once you did that, once you really felt like, okay, I need to step into this new identity, then you landed the role, right? So then what happened?
Yeah, well, I really want to say, that was a 6-year process, from the ages of 14 when I actually saw the movie to, 6 years later when I landed the role. And on that time, I look back on it and I have a mantra that just says, when in doubt, just do the brave thing. Like, just do the brave thing. Like, you will always win when you do the brave thing. It might not be right away, but if you just keep doing that, magic happens.
Yeah.
And I look back on my journey, and there were so many decisions that I almost didn't I almost didn't do it. I almost didn't move to LA. I almost didn't go to the audition. I literally saw the audition on the wall and my whole heart dropped. And I was like, that's my movie. That I didn't even know they would ever make a sequel. And I talked myself out of going. I was like, I'm not going to go. I'm not ready. I'm not good enough. I had just had a bunch of agents telling me that, that I wasn't ready, that they didn't want to sign me, that I hadn't done anything yet. And so I literally talked myself out of going. I went home and I was like, justified all the reasons why, like, I shouldn't go. And, uh, thank God I felt this voice. It was like I felt this feeling of like, you have to go. And I swear it
Yeah.
pulled me out the door. And so I love sharing that because there are so many moments on our journey where these choices that we're making make a drastic difference in the entire trajectory of our life. And I also love a phrase that says, like, what is for me will not pass me. Because for a long time, I lived in this place of like a lot of FOMO. I was like, oh, if I'm not at all the things, if I don't go to everything, what if I miss
Yeah.
an opportunity? And I was chasing everything rather than really coming from this place of allowing, trusting, surrendering, attracting.
Hmm.
um, and so I think those two mantras hand in hand of just, I just always do the brave thing. And what is for me will not pass me. Living, embodying those, like truly being honest with myself if I am embodying those or if I'm not, has been a big game changer. But a really big thing what happened after was I just lived my childhood dream.
Hmm.
And it was this 3 months feeling of like living in this fantasy. And then what was really interesting was I remember flying to Vancouver. We shot it and thinking like, oh, my life's going to be like made. I'm set from here on
Yeah.
out. Like, I'm just going to be at huge movies all the time. And like, my life's going to be great. And it was a really hard awakening of after we shot it. And I just went back to LA. Nobody knew what I did. I just had to go back to square one to going to these massive auditions. And it was like straight depression
Yeah.
for a while. It was really hard. It was really, really hard. But I am so grateful for those times because it it's so humbling. Like, it's
Hmm.
so humbling. And I really feel that pain is one of our greatest teachers. And so I've been through quite a bit of both the highs, but also the very extreme lows that have both taught me really incredible things. So I think it's the meaning that we associate with it though. Like, I used to run away from pain and I used to like avoid it at all costs, whether it was in relationships or career or finance or whatever. And now it's really been deeply understanding that it is not what happens to us, it's the meaning we associate with it that makes all the difference.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So you ended up going, you came back to LA, you really felt like, oh my gosh, this is I don't know what to do next because nobody
Yes.
really understands what I just
Yes.
went and did. And I think that happens, right? It's like when we reach a certain space in our lives that we've been thinking about for so long.
Mhm.
And then it's like, oh my gosh, what next? Now I need to reevaluate what is the
Yes.
new identity that I want to step into. And that can cause some sort of depression. So before we go there, I'm curious what advice you would give people who are in that space of wanting to
Mm.
dream bigger, but they feel like they can't, or they feel like no matter what it is that I try to do, everything just
Mm.
kind of feels capped.
Yes.
What do you do when you're in that moment?
Okay, this is one of my favorite questions. So I've learned more as an actress about personal growth and manifestation than maybe anything else. Because as an actress, you're putting on these different characters. You're allowing these different versions of yourself to show up in a very playful way. And especially when I studied psychology, I majored in psychology as well. And I've just always been fascinated about what makes us do what we do or don't do. Um, and I feel like there's a certain amount of act like the version that you want to be and just believe that, like, I'm playing a character right now. I'm just having fun playing with this different version of myself. I think adding play into our life, into our day one of the most massive game changers, because oftentimes, especially in the kind of healing personal development world, it can be very serious and very rigid, very structured, and it's masculine. And, if anybody's into kind of understanding masculine and feminine energies and how to balance them, the feminine energy that I think a lot of us struggle with, whether you're male or female, this playful, creative, allowing energy, that is very powerful. And actually, I just watched a movie yesterday called Hitman, and they do such a great job of showcasing this, of what it could be for a person. There's a line in there that I love so much. It says, let me see if I can remember it properly. Decide the version of yourself you want to be, the identity that you want to be, and go after it with passion and abandon. And I think there's this power that we can unlock within us that maybe takes lots of different things. I think it's trying all the tools, whether it's breath work, yoga, meditation, dance, screaming, yelling, cold plunges, whatever it is that helps you shift your state. Even for me, something called Morning Pages, a book called The Artist's Way, has been incredibly influential in my life. And this practice of, as soon as you wake up, or honestly, whenever you can during the day, as we have very busy lives, you just get out paper and you just mind dump on a page. You just get all the bullshit out of your head and onto the paper. And it is wild, the experience that happens from that, in a completely judgment-free zone. Like, you're just writing, it doesn't even make sense. Nobody's going to read it. It's just for you to slow down your mind. Like, my mind goes so fast. And I have all these spinning thoughts about, like, am I good enough? Are they going to like me? Like all this stuff. And when I actually write it out on the page and I get curious about all those thoughts, it's really powerful what comes up. It's usually always something back to childhood about basically really those questions of, who do I believe I am? What do I believe I'm deserving of? What do I believe I'm capable of? And why do I believe those things? Where did those thoughts, those beliefs come from? Are they really mine? Or is it someone else's? Is it a teacher, a parent, maybe an unhealthy friendship or relationship that put those thoughts into my mind? And I just started to kind of believe it. And then once I started to believe it, my actions and my habits start aligning with those things. And so that's what I think is so powerful about acting as if, playing a character. And I'll tell this really short story that I think helps embody this. So I had a huge audition. I got flown out to Atlanta at Tyler Perry Studios. I was so excited. I was down to the last 3 people about to get this massive life-changing role. And it did not go the way that I hoped it would. I just did not feel good about it. Felt like I totally bombed. And it was really hard. It was really, really hard. And I remember leaving the hotel that they had put us up in and getting in this Uber, going back to LA and feeling so defeated and discouraged and questioning all of my talent and my worth and my value as both an actress and a human. And I got in the car, and I remember playing this other character I played in this movie called Cold Moon, and her name was Belinda Hale. And she was this Southern Belle character. She was this full of life, very just so fun. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to get in this car and I'm going to be Belinda right now. And I just decided to get in this Uber and talk like this and be like, hey, how are you doing? And just talk with this Uber for 30 minutes in this character that was a different version of me, that got me out of my spinning thoughts. It was almost like a really powerful form of meditation, because you're not thinking any of your same thoughts. You're literally a completely different version of yourself. And by the end of that ride, I felt completely different. I had this spark again. I had this light inside of me. And I really believe we all have all these different versions or these characters within us. And oftentimes what makes us feel so stuck is we get stuck in this one version that maybe is a very limited version. And the way that I've found how to get out of that is playing a different part.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so big. So this podcast is all about, what I like to speak about is all about, how do you how do you find a different version of yourself? But also when it comes to love, when it comes to relationships, when it comes
Yes.
to dating, when it comes to being in relationship with anything in your life, how do
Yes.
you start to find those higher levels of the things that you desire? And I think what you just brought up is really important because I often tell my women who come to me who are struggling to find a partner to do life with. And we do all the somatic work. You know, they're in therapy for 2, 3 months. We've done all the inner child work, all the really serious stuff. It
Yes.
gets to a certain point where I start to teach manifestation. And I always say, listen, it's impossible to manifest if your nervous system is a wreck. You just can't do
Yes.
it. So we have to do
Yes.
that work first. But then when we get to the manifestation piece and we start to realize like, okay, I want to go out there and I want to attract this really loving, beautiful relationship. We have to start to play into that character.
Yes.
And what you just explained is exactly what that looks like.
Yes.
It's being able to say, okay, I know that I want this really loving relationship in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I currently don't have anyone, but what would it look like? And what would it feel like? And how could I embody showing up every day as if I'm already in that relationship?
Yes.
Right. And I think that that's what you just explained, even though, you know, you're talking about something completely different of not getting a role. It's the exact same principle.
Yeah. Yeah. And I could not agree with you more. I mean, even my journey to find my love and my dream guy now, that's what I had to do. And
Yeah.
it's not easy. You know, when you
No.
feel stuck or frustrated or you're going through a heartbreak or you feel discouraged, it's literally one of the hardest things to get yourself to continue to believe
Mm-hmm.
that something different is possible for you and that something great is out there. And something that helped me a ton, that I had this massive quote on my wall. It says, what you are looking for is also looking for you.
Yeah.
Just as much as you are crying, praying, dreaming, screaming for this dream partner, they're out there doing the same exact thing for you. And I would often, even, you know, in my mind, do really intense, like deep meditations where I would just live that with my dream guy. I would
Yeah.
do all that I possibly could to experience, to feel, to create this world in my mind, in my inner world, where that I was just that. I was that. I was with him, and not what it just looked like, but everything that it felt like. And it just, at the time when I was so heartbroken and discouraged, it just gave me hope. It just
Yeah.
helped me be like, wait, maybe there is this other world. And you know, even though I got told I was being too picky, or my friends are worried about me, or just, you know, all these different very like gut wrenching experiences, I was just like, I saw it though. Like I saw, you know,
Mm-hmm.
one or two other couples that I was like, no, but I want that. Like
Yeah.
similar to the movie, right? Like you have to almost put yourself in situations where you're around it. Because
Mm-hmm.
before I was around, before I saw the movie, before I was around a healthy, supportive, playful relationship, I didn't even know, I had never seen it before. I didn't even know it existed. So my standard of what was possible was way lower. But then I was around it and I was like, I want that. Like if they can
Yeah.
have it, so can I. And it was holding so deeply to that belief, you know, over, you know, decades, believing that that was possible. And I think I'm really passionate about helping people cultivate belief, because I think belief is, it is the foundation. If you don't believe it's possible, it probably won't be, because
Right.
you decided that it's not. But if you do, and if you can hold fast to that belief and do daily practices to cultivate that belief, it it might not happen the way you think. It probably won't happen the way you think it's going to happen, but it might even happen even better or even cooler, you know?
Yeah. 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 It's so true. It's so, so true. And I love that. I love that you shared that story about your partner too, because it's oftentimes, I mean, it really, with anything in your life, if you do have that deep belief system, and again, like you said, it's not easy. You have to show up for it. It has to permeate your being. Like it has to be something that you show up for every single day. And it's funny because I often get women who say, oh, I don't have time to do it. And I'm like, well, then you don't have time to be in a relationship.
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
what do you think it's going to be like? Or for instance, in your, you know, in your example about wanting to land your dream role. If you don't have time to visualize it, how are you actually going to have time for whatever it is that you're visualizing to make its way into your life?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing. I think that what you're talking about is just make it a practice every single day.
Yeah. Really, it's like, how bad do you want it? I
Yeah.
mean, how bad do you want it? And to know that me and my husband talk about this all the time. We are completely different versions of ourselves. When we talked about you almost have to become this other identity,
Mm-hmm.
I am. We are. Like, I used to be a very in relationships, and this was my hero's journey in relationships, was I was never fully honest. And I wondered why I thought all my boyfriends had trust issues. I'm like, well, maybe because I'm not very trustworthy.
Yeah.
And if I want to, one of the things that we teach, at all our workshops and our events and stuff is, or just with clients, is to make a list of everything you want, like everything you want to the, as detailed as you can. And especially when it comes to how that dream partner, that person is going to make, how it feels to be with them, what their qualities are, and then putting that list somewhere you see it every day, and then holding yourself accountable to being that list.
Yes.
And when I wrote down my list and I, made a candle, I made it a thing. You put music on, you put a candle and you make it this like special thing. And there's always going to be resistance too. I talk about that a lot. Like with anything, when it comes to manifestation or attracting or changing your life at all, I feel like expect resistance. Like expect your mind
1,000%.
to go like, oh, I'll do it later, or oh, I don't know about that. That's silly. It'll come up with all the reasons why you should do it. Because I believe that part of you is holding on. Like it doesn't want
Mm-hmm.
to die. It doesn't want to change. Change is hard. It's scary. And so it's like I talk to my emotions all the time. If I'm feeling resistance, I'm like, okay, resistance, I feel you. I love you. Okay, fear. I'm happy that you're here. Thanks for trying to do your job to protect me, but I'm safe. I'm good. Like let's do this together.
Yeah.
Because I think it's really important. The more we try to push away something, the more it persists and gets louder. But then when we welcome it in and be like, hey, you can hang, but you can't drive. You can sit in the back, but I'm driving the show. I'm driving the ship. And you just do it. It's always this special, powerful experience. But then when you really look at that list, being brutally honest with yourself, or like, are you being that? Are you, if you want someone that's honest, are you being fully honest? Or are you like the past version of me that would tell all these white lies because I was too scared of hurting someone, or I was too scared of not, them thinking I'm not good enough or not being perfect or whatever. And so, I think that's the journey.
It is. It's a humbling experience. It's funny. I make my clients do the same thing. I call it the mirror exercise. It's like, what are all the things you want in a partner? Now here's the hard part. Flip it. Are you doing that? And it's wild to me. I'll get so many women that come and they're like, oh, I just keep attracting these men who won't commit to me, or these men who are emotionally unavailable, or men I don't like. And I'm like, okay, now we have to pause and you have to ask yourself the really hard question. How is this a reflection of how you're showing up for yourself?
Yes.
If you're attracting men who are emotionally unavailable, where are you not being fully present with yourself? Where are you not tuning into being emotionally available for yourself? And it's so humbling. And I love that exercise. Everybody, if you're listening, you need to do that. Write it down and then get really honest with yourself. Because it's a great one.
Well, and know that it doesn't change when you get in a relationship either.
No, ever.
It's almost like you're building that muscle, because when you're actually in a relationship, anytime, my husband and I, we have like a speech and like / comedy sketch that we do called Triggers or Gifts. And this concept of like, anytime that you're triggered, like 90% of the time, it's probably something within you that hasn't been healed yet.
Yeah.
And so this concept of like having to face ourselves and our stuff and being really honest about like, ooh, am I angry or mad or triggered from something? It's like digging this deep. We call it, that triggers are just really beautiful gifts wrapped in extremely ugly wrapping paper.
Yeah.
And that like taking off this ugly wrapping paper is the work, is the like really questioning, why you're triggered and where it's
Right.
coming from. And does it relate back to something that happened to you in childhood, or is it a pattern? Or, how am I asking yourself, like, how am I projecting my
Right.
stuff onto this situation? And so, yeah, if you're in a space looking for your partner and you're like, oh man, this work is too hard to become this list, just know that if you're in a relationship, it continues on. Like, you have to keep this practice of facing yourself and your shadows and doing the work.
Yeah. It never stops. It never stops. People are always like, when does it end? I'm like, it never ends. So just
Yeah.
take
And
a
that
deep
there is
breath and jump in.
jump in, and there is no there. That's one of my
Yeah.
favorite quotes from one of my mentors. Like, there is no there that any of us will ever get to where we're just like,
We're
that's
here.
it. We're
Yeah.
here. Like, where
Yeah.
there's no amount of money, there's no relationship, there's no nothing. And I think, while some people are like, oh, that sucks, like,
Yeah.
it's actually really empowering. And this wake up call to, like, that is why all of spiritual texts and anything that you read says, be here now and enjoy the journey, because it's
Yeah.
really all that matters is this journey, and it's this constant evolution. And that's why I'm also so passionate about adding as much play into the journey as possible, and whatever that looks like. But I think, like, silliness and ridiculousness and
Mhm.
and laughter and joy, even in the really hard spaces, I think is just really important, because there is no there.
Yeah. So true. So good. So one last question for you before we kind of wrap up and talk about what's next for you. I ask this on every episode. And so
Mm,
I'm excited to hear your answer to this. So what does it mean for you when you hear the word aligned relationship? Like, to
mm,
be in an aligned relationship, to know an aligned relationship. And we're not talking just romantic, it can be with yourself. What does that
mm,
mean to you? And how would you explain that?
mm. I love that, because aligned is one of my favorite words. I'm always searching for this word that encompasses, the fullest expression of life, of love, of our divine, what I believe is our divine power and connection to the creator of all things, this whether you believe in God or spirituality or whatever, the universe, but this capacity of creation. And I believe our ability to be aligned with all of it, where there is no limitation. And I think this concept of an aligned relationship with both yourself and your partner, I mean, first, I think the most important one is with yourself, because it is a direct reflection of all relationships and your entire experience of life. Oh, and something just came up for me that I think I would love to share about this. When I think about that, I think of, what kind of space am I creating for my soul to live in? Right. So when I was younger, I created a very toxic, like, judgmental, critical space for my soul to live in. And I constantly lived with just this underlying anxiety and fear, and judgment. And it sucked. Like, it sucked.
Yeah.
And at the time, I didn't know that I didn't even know that there was something else possible. I had to go kind of on my journey of reading and workshops and practices and all this stuff to be like, oh, like, I'm doing all of that. I am doing that. I am the creator of this whole experience. And I feel like there's just all these deeper layers and levels of that awareness and of that understanding. And so I think it's that constant question for me of, what kind of space am I creating for my soul to live in? And if it's not a healthy, supportive, peaceful, playful, fully alive space, then what can I do to make it that?
Yeah. Yeah. So good. Love it so much. So really being in that space of questioning, how can I go deeper? That is aligned. It sounds like that's what's alignment to you,
Yes.
is how can I create the space for my soul to live in, but also how can I continue to question so that I can continue to go deeper and deeper into alignment with what's
Yes.
meant for me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. So
And,
good.
and I think that that power of just like there, where there is, it's all possibility. Like
Yeah.
there's no limitation.
Mm-hmm.
It's, it's all these, like, if you look at frequencies and energies, there's a spectrum of where love and hope and faith and all these like higher vibration emotions or feelings are. And so being able to live in that, being able to
Mm-hmm.
be in the space of every morning waking up and asking questions like, okay, what's the highest thing for me to do today? What's
Yeah.
the most optimal thing for me to do today? And trusting it, being in
Right.
a space where you're living throughout the day. And if you have an instinct to go talk to someone, to go do something, to go donate, to go make a call, like to go do a dance in the middle of the street, just because, like, that you do it.
Yeah.
Like, I think that is alignment, like trusting, being so connected with that higher, deeper part of yourself that you actually trust it. And you're not living from your head, you're literally living from your, what they call your hora, your hara. It's like
Yeah.
that deeper, deeper part of you. And my husband and I have really been playing with this concept of, where are we living? Are
Yeah.
we living up here in our head, or are we
Mm-hmm.
living from this deeper place where you're not overthinking things? You're literally just, if you haven't a feeling to go talk to someone, you just do it,
Yeah.
and you don't question it. And I think that is alignment too.
I love it. Love it so much. So, Rachel, what's next for you? Can you take a moment to let people know where they can find you and also
Yeah.
what you have coming up?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the work that you're doing. I think this podcast and everything that you talk about is just so important, and so I really just want to celebrate you for
Thank
all the
you.
hard work that I know, and hopefully lots of people know how hard it is to create something like this, that you've done. It's really beautiful and so important. And I think the best place for people to find me is, my website is rachelebsmith.com, and it's RACHELE and or all over social media at R Brooke Smith on Instagram, and relationship.renegades on Instagram. But I think I'm really grateful and excited that I have 3 new films coming out, 2 later this year, and then 1 next year. So one is called Legend of the White Dragon, and it's a really special film for me because I actually get to play like the main female superhero character in this film, alongside some pretty incredible legends. And the 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 message of the film, I think, is really important, especially today, that even superheroes need help.
Mm.
And because I think we often have this thing of like, oh, if I'm strong, if I'm brave, I don't need help. Like, if I'm the hero,
Yeah.
then I have to do it by myself. And I think that's the biggest lie. And it's also a very special film to me because a dear dear friend of mine who I play opposite in the film, ended up, after he finished the movie, taking his life. And it was extremely hard for me and for everyone involved because he was just so incredible. And he was a hero to so many, myself included. And we would often talk on set about how, how we wanted to do so much more to help people with mental health, and to help inspire them and empower them, and use the film together to do a lot of that stuff. And so, it's just, it really means a lot to me, this film. And I hope that I hope it inspires or helps as many people as possible, and also that we honor him with his last film, and that hopefully, it's also a big wake up call to anybody out there that feels like they are too strong or too scared to ask for help. I hope that no matter who you are, what you're going through, that I think one of the bravest things that you can do is ask for help. And so that movie is really exciting. It's supposed to be out this fall. And I play a character called Iris that is just super, super cool. And then another film that I both act in and helped produce is called Alien Country. And that also comes out this fall. And just a really amazing story of not just how to fall in love, but how to stay in love amidst crazy challenges like an alien invasion. And so it's a lot of fun. It's just like fun, feel good, like action, comedy, adventure. And we've done some test screenings, and just people are laughing the entire time. And it's like the best feeling. And there's a lot of deep principles and messages interwoven into that, which is really cool. And then the next one I have coming out next year is an animated movie that I can't talk too much about, but it's has a lot of huge names in it. And I'm just, it's a really cool story.
Love it. So good. And well, thank you so much, Rachel. And we'll make sure too that we drop all of that in the show notes so that people can check out your website. They can check out where to check out the movie when it comes out, all of the movies that you're in, which is really exciting. And I know that I'm going to need to have you on again so we can go even deeper into some of these topics. So thank you so much for showing up and sharing your heart with us. And I will
we should do another one. Oh, I was going to say, we should do another one with me and my husband with our,
yes. Oh my gosh. I would love that.
Our, you know, because our movement relationship renegades and the different kind of events or workshops, retreats that we're doing. Yeah, I think it'd be really cool to do together.
I would love to have you on, both of you on, to talk about that. I think that would be so fun. And I feel like that all of my listeners would really love that too. So we'll have to definitely get that on the books, and maybe we can even do it in person. If
that'd be amazing.
I'm out on this side of the country again, and because I'd love to do and meet you guys and just spend some time together.
Yes.
I love it. Well, Rachel, thank you so much again. And again, if you're listening, we'll drop everything in the show notes. So make sure that you check it out, and we'll see all of you on the next episode of the Align Love podcast. That wraps up today's episode of the Aligned Love podcast. One thing that would really help me and the other new potential listeners is for you to rate this show and leave a comment wherever you tune in and listen. Also, make sure to link up with me on Instagram at Lauren Zoller, and please share this podcast with anyone who you think may enjoy it. Until next episode, remember, every transformation begins with one moment of awareness, and I hope today has been yours. I'll see you next time.